Karen Huger from the Real Housewives of Potomac was recently sentenced to 2 years in jail, 1 year suspended for a DUI case that happened, I want to say a year prior, and she was going through the motions. I would like for you to break down this case because a lot of us, first and foremost, we want to know this. Karen, it has now been revealed that Karen has 4 DUIs, and that was something that came out recently. The question was, how can someone get 3 DUIs and never have jail time to begin with? What is the law in all of that?
How does that even happen, right? So let me start by answering that direct question, and then I'll retro back. So the answer is, Carlos, somebody can get up to 4 DUIs, as we see is the case with Karen, and never serve a day in jail up until this point because of 2 words: judge's discretion. That's the why. There is, for most states, I should say, and this is very much raindrops, this is a state-by-state scenario, legal scenario. Each state is works differently rather. Karen, we know, is in the state of Maryland, is adjudicating this for Karen Huger. So in the state of Maryland, whether or not a particular conviction gets active jail time, we call that an active sentence or probation or house arrest or whatever the determination of sentencing looks like, Carlos, it is exclusively up to the judge's discretion, meaning what the judge feels is appropriate. Now, let's be clear. Prosecutors can make a recommendation. So a district attorney can say, I'm sure historically in Karen's previous 3 DUI convictions, made a recommendation to the court. Well, the district attorney's office recommends 6 months. The district attorney's office recommends 1 year, 30 days, weekend sentence, whatever. The judge is not bound by it, Carlos. Judge ain't got to do a damn thing but what the judge wants to do. So the fact that we have seen Karen avoid an active jail sentence up until this point, I'm going to tell you in my legal experience, and I used to specify DUIs heavy in my practice when I practiced criminal law in North Carolina. Probably 30% of my caseload as a public defender were DUIs, so I know this one very well. I've never seen somebody get to a 3rd DUI and not serve an active jail time. Haven't seen it. And I was sworn into practice in 2007. So y'all do the math. 18-ish years as a practicing attorney. So I will say that's exceptional for those of you that are scratching your head once you found out. See, many and this is how it should be. I want to say this part too, Carlos. That means people are doing their job. That the public did not know what Karen Huger's prior conviction record looked like. That's a good thing. That is called the discretion of the court. Okay. But now that it's been adjudicated, she's been found guilty at trial at the end of 2024. Sentencing was on deck. Now we're finding out. Okay. Because as soon as I heard the sentence, I forgot where I was, but I was texting with my producer. Shout out to Ashley Hobbs over at Holden Court. And I said, damn, they gave her 2 years, 1 suspended. So she's going to do a year in jail. I said, she must have priors. She must, because it would be unthinkable, unfathomable for a first-time DUI offender to get an active jail sentence, mostly at all, but certainly no more than 15, 20, 30 days. Somebody saying in California, you do a mandatory 8 hours for your first offense. Very interesting. Okay, cool. So that's why I say, y'all, state by state. So anyway,
state by state.
Yeah. So when I saw that Karen had an active year sentence with another year, as we say in the business, hanging over her head, that's how we refer to that suspended year, because that's a mechanism that the judge puts in place to basically keep you on a short leash, to basically say, Miss Huger, you can you cuss on this?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Miss Huger, you've been fucking around. You've been playing in our goddamn face. Okay. As the judiciary, as it relates to the offense of driving under the influence. And so what we're going to do this time, we're going to do it differently. You're going to get an active sentence. The maximum you could have received was 2 years. I'm actually going to give you the max. Raindrops, do be clear. This judge gave her the maximum sentence, 2 active years in jail. He chose to suspend 1 as to say to her, if you breathe wrong, when you get out on day 366, if you breathe wrong, you're going back. Don't pass go. Don't collect $200, and you will serve every day of that second year. That's how that works.
Wow. See, this is the reason why I needed somebody.
No, you didn't need somebody. You needed Eboni K Williams. That's why. Let's be clear. Let's be clear. Can't nobody give it up like this, baby.
No, baby. No, baby. And you are cooking, as the young folks say. So look, what occurred to begin with where there's these two sort of like rumors that I don't know is concrete fact. They're saying that allegedly prior to Karen's case going to trial, that allegedly she was offered a plea deal. Allegedly, they're saying one plea deal was 6 months house arrest. The other alleged plea deal was 60 days in jail, and they're alleging she turned these things down. Are these true in terms of these plea deals even happening?
So I did some digging on this because, you know, I'm also a journalist.
Hey, Portia. Yes.
See, that's why y'all raindrop. This is why me and Carlos don't do this often, because we be cutting
I love her, but we need to, honey. Stay tuned. No, go ahead, Eboni.
I really did do investigation here because I didn't want to come with speculation. So the only credible source, let me back that up. The only source, I'll let the people decide if it's credible, that I could find that gave that report, Carlos. And you're right; those were the reported offered plea deals. One of 60 days active jail time, the other of 6 months house arrest. It was a publication called TV Deets, DEETS, TV Deets. That is the only publication I can find on record reporting that prosecutors allegedly offered that pre-trial. Those are pre-trial. I'm not very familiar with TV Deets, so I can't speak to their credibility. I will tell you this. It is not uncommon, or indeed it is customary, for prosecutors to offer, especially what we call, which Ms. Huger is, a habitual offender. Once you get to 2 and 3 and now 4 DUIs, there's a name for that in the court. We call you are a habitual offender. So now when you're a habitual offender, you are often given an opportunity to adjudicate pre-trial. Okay, let's kind of wrap this up. We kind of been down this road before. We know what it looks like. We're going to offer something that's going to be reasonable by prosecution standards. Defense team will take it up with their client and see what they want to decide. Because I personally can't say TV Deets is credible enough for my journalistic standards. No shade. I can't say for sure that she was offered anything, but I can tell you if she was, Carlos, offered either of those 6 months house arrest or even 60 days active jail sentence, it was a gift from the prosecution. She and her legal team should have taken it with a smile on their faces and went about their business.
Yeah. One of the things that was also alleged to Eboni, and I want you to break it down from the legality standpoint, because these are rumors, and as us being journalists, we want to make sure we report the facts. So there is another rumor that there was a man in the car at the time of Karen's DUI accident. What I found to be so interesting is, obviously, if somebody was in the vehicle and let's say this person ran away while Karen stayed, let's say that was the case, is the police able to discover that by doing their investigation? Is that something that will be, on the court logs that we can find out by public record?
Okay, so a few things. The file itself should not just be generally open, because that would kind of contaminate the sanctity, if you will, of what we do inside of a courtroom. So that's not going to be something that you guys could just access online, for instance. Okay, it's not like how we can look up Puff's federal indictment and complaint. That's a public record. It's only because a judge has unsealed the indictment. So that's why we have access to that. As the public, Carlos, we don't generally just get carte blanche access to all courtroom proceedings. It's certainly not at the district level for our consumption. So that's not available for public consumption. Now, whether or not there was another individual at the scene of the crime, because it was absolutely a crime, we now know, who's to say? Who's to say? Pure speculation. Whether or not it makes a difference, also who's to say? The only way I can see it making a difference, Carlos, is if indeed Karen wanted to make a defense claim that she wasn't indeed behind the wheel driving. It was this third party, this unknown, identified third party that was actually the driver, and then he or she fled the scene, leaving Karen to kind of hold the wheel, if you will. If you know, she wanted to go down that road of a defense argument, you know, she could have at it, but we don't have any evidence of that. That's the only way I could see that mattering, if you will, from a legal standpoint. If I could, Carlos, a couple of your raindrops did want to know if Karen herself probably had access to see the DUI video, the sobriety test video.
Yes. Are you able to see that if you're in Karen's position?
Yes. The answer is yes. It's actually something called the Brady. I'm taking you out of law school. Y'all need to really put something on my Cash App in this motherfucker. Well, there's something called I'm just playing. The baby's got to eat, Carlos.
Baby's got to eat, baby. I got you, boo. Go ahead, boo.
No, let me tell you. So there's something called the Brady Rule of Evidence. And this is an evidentiary rule that all proceedings follow that actually requires all prosecutors to deliver any evidence that the prosecution has, whether they'll use it or not, that could go to, convicting the client. They must turn over and review. It must be mutually shared between both sides. So there's no crazy surprises. And if we think about it, that makes sense, right? If you are going to be, prosecuted in a court of law, you do have a right to defend yourself. And therefore, you have a right to all of the evidence, both potentially exculpatory, which is Brady, or damning, to be able to properly prepare your defense. That's why we have that rule. So yes, Karen and her legal team, I remember when I was practicing in North Carolina, when I had DUI clients I was defending, that's one of the first things. If they don't take it upon themselves to expeditiously, to use a TI term, hand it over, baby, I'll file a motion. I'm gonna need that tape, sir. I'm gonna need that tape, ma'am, because it's from the tape, Carlos, that I can most adequately prepare my defense. So absolutely, Karen and her defense team had that tape for months. Were able to review it head to toe, poke holes in it. That is why they did file a pre-trial motion, Karen and her defense team, to try to get the whole case dismissed off the premise that it was an improper search and seizure. If you can prove in a DUI, this is actually the best way to get a DUI dismissed. If you could prove that the stop was bad, the stop was erroneous, they had no legitimate legal reason to stop you, other than you were a Black woman driving a Maserati, for instance, the whole case goes away. Now, I'm not saying that applies to Karen Huger, but
this is very interesting information.
Yeah.
That's why I'm glad to have you on. I got one more question for you, Eboni. Darlene, Carlos, I'm so glad you got. I know. Listen, Eboni is the only person right for this job, and I'm just keeping it a buck. So, shout out to the Kingdom Reign team. Okay. Anyways, when it comes to the sentencing. Thank you for breaking down, because I was confused with 2-year sentence, 1 year suspended. Eboni just told us that is sort of like dangling over Karen's head.
Hold that over your head to make sure you're on your very best, tip top. So whenever she do come back, baby, for I guess what's it gonna be, probably by season 11 of Potomac, when she get back, I guess she gonna be standing at attention.
So this is my question to you: will Karen do the full year? Or will she more than likely serve lesser time if she is behaving well in jail?
I think you and a lot of folks, Carlos, watching too many goddamn Lifetime movies. I don't know where y'all getting this good behavior out in 6 months bullshit from. No, sir. Let me tell you what. This is not a federal. So that good behavior, think of that as how people think about and talk about common law marriage. It's more or less a legal myth. Okay. That's not a real thing. Only in the extent that you've got a real existential issue that works on behalf of the correction institute itself. For instance, if the facility is overcrowded, if a global pandemic like COVID happens again, there must be a reason. People aren't just going about the business of sentencing people. You think this judge is playing, Carlos? The judge ain't playing. This judge, literally, the prosecution, y'all keep in mind, the prosecution only recommended Karen be sentenced to 6 months. The judge could have very easily sentenced her to 6 months if he intended for her to serve 6 months. So there is no intention by this judge of her to be getting out early, of her to be released for good behavior. No. Now, let me tell you where it could be an early release. If there is excruciating circumstances, heaven forbid, Brother Ray, health turns bad. Heaven forbid, Karen herself finds herself in a health conundrum. The daughter isn't. There must be, and then her lawyer would have to file a motion to ask for compassionate release or something of the sort. Y'all, much respect to Miss Huger, much respect to her family. The judge said a year for a reason. He actually said 2. He actually said he's suspending 1. It is most likely that she will serve every day of that 1 year active sentence. Give or take a week or 2 for processing. But this early release on good behavior and get it. Oh, somebody, good question. I talk about this on Holding Court. Didn't they shorten Jen Shaw's sentence? Jen Shaw's sentence was shortened, but not necessarily for good behavior. Jen Shaw's sentence has been shortened by my count twice. But let's compare and contrast. Number one, biggest point of contrast, Jen Shaw is serving what kind of sentence, y'all? A federal one. A federal one. Yeah, this is very different. So you know what that tells me? When you start seeing federal sentences of that length, 3, 4, I think Jen was originally sentenced to something close to 4 or 5 years. I mean, she had some real time. Oh yeah, it wasn't no year or 2, Carlos. Jen was sentenced to 60 months. It was something serious. It was well over 3 years. And we've seen her sentence be reduced twice since she's been incarcerated at the federal level. That's giving cooperation. That's giving 5. Thank you, Valencia. Shout out to Raindrop Valencia. Jen Shaw's original sentence was 5 years. She's now going to be home by my count in less than 3. That is likely because of a few things that we shouldn't know as the public, but likely she has been able to provide some information to the federal prosecutors that is important to them, favorable to them, and that has allowed her sentence to be reduced. Yep.
Eboni, my mouth is on the floor, so it's very dry. So excuse my gag. Okay. I'm in shock.
Yeah.
With
what part? The federal piece or Jen?
All of it, but I assume because I do watch
Lifetime.
No. My first crush when I was younger was Blair Underwood.
Oh, Law and Order. Yes. LA Law.
So I would watch LA Law.
Yeah.
My father was like, "Why aren't you watching sports?" I said, "Because Blair Underwood's on LA Law. Like, Dad, leave me alone."
And find it all outside. Yeah, go ahead. Mm-hmm.
Hence my type in chocolate. Well, was. Anyway, look, the thing is, I didn't know any of this. I too was like, "Oh, good behavior," because that's just what was embedded in my brain.
That's also been in the narrative, Carlos. Yeah. I'm just playing. That's not just you, baby. A lot of people are saying, "Oh, good behavior. Oh, 6 months. Oh, 7 months." Again, if she's out in 6 months, I'll come back and eat my hand. But I'm telling you what I know. The intention is for her to serve every bit of that year, with that extra year hanging on over her head to incentivize her to do what she has yet to prove herself able to do, which is stay sober when you are behind the wheel of a vehicle. And let me add this for those that think that the sentence is harsh or severe. I want you to, and I understand most of y'all are fans of Karen's, fans of Potomac, and this is hard to see. And let's be clear, I'm not celebrating no Black woman going to jail, period. So that's on that. But think about how wonderful God's grace is that Karen didn't hurt herself or someone else. How wonderful and gracious a God we serve that Karen didn't kill herself or someone else. And therefore, when the prosecutor and the judge, specifically the judge, Carlos, because we got to talk about politics for 1 second here. Politics are at play, Raindrops, because judges and prosecutors run for office, okay? And they must be elected. And when their election is up and they have to go out there and solicit votes, it goes like this, because I've seen it, Carlos. If you're the sitting judge and I'm behind the wheel and it's my third or fourth DUI, and the next time I get out, because Judge Carlos King said, well, Eboni K Williams is a nice woman and I want to see her do well and I want to give her another chance. So even after her third DUI, I'm gonna give her probation because I think she's gonna do it this time. And I get behind the wheel one more time on that fourth time and I kill somebody, the blood of that person, man, woman, or they or child, that blood is on Carlos King's hands because he had an opportunity to course correct behavior by incentivizing corrective measure, and he chose not to do so. That's politically how the narrative goes.
Yeah, and that's the reason why the local, voters elect the judges too.